I hope you enjoy this Hachette Learning webinar on curriculum design for Key Stage 3 Geography, led by David Gardner. David is the lead author and series editor of the GA award-winning course, Progress in Geography for Key Stage 3 from Hachette Learning. He is also the author of numerous other successful geography textbooks and teacher's guides. He taught for 28 years before becoming a curriculum advisor and national lead for geography at the QCA, and has worked with teachers all over the world on curriculum and assessment development. David has also worked extensively in teacher education, as well as leading a wide range of professional development for secondary teachers, focusing on curriculum design and assessment. He is now a freelance education consultant, author, and a consultant to the GA. So over to you now, David.
Thank you, Vicky. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Planning for progress in procedural knowledge. We'll look at what procedural knowledge is in this session. I've linked to various ideas about geography education, about procedural knowledge and its function in designing a coherent sequence geography curriculum. I hope you find this useful and beneficial to your curriculum planning. So this session will go from, hopefully support you going from the idea of geographical skills to procedural knowledge. It's about a change in perspective in terms of the way in which you view geographical skills. It builds on two existing professional development sessions for Progress in Geography that I've done, one for new users of the course and one for existing users, in terms of how the second edition of the course is different and also and similar. And also this episode of JogPod, these whole series, find it really interesting chats with John Lyon. John Lyon's one of the authors of the first edition of Progress in Geography, and we talk through the principles of curriculum design. So that's a further resource you might wish to utilize. Let's start with the 2023 geography subject report, which highlighted an issue in terms of sequencing procedural knowledge, and Ofsted's explained that is underdeveloped in the schools that were visited, and that leaders rarely planned when they would introduce and return to different geographical skills. They recommended that schools plan for procedural knowledge in their curriculum in the same way as they do substantive knowledge. This session, and also looking at the use of GIS, this session is about why. Why is that necessary? Why is procedural knowledge so significant to designing a coherent and sequenced curriculum to support learners to becoming geographers? So first of all, then, let's consider what procedural knowledge is. The GA's initial teacher education guidance, that whole section of their website, was my starting point, and I came up with this definition of procedural knowledge and skills used in geography learning for students to find out, think, analyse and apply their geography. And they use the term geographical practice to cover all these skills and competencies. That geographical practice is working like a geographer, where students find out and make sense of the world. And making sense of the world requires pupils to be able to visualize and analyze spatial relationships between places. And at the heart of this geographical practice is the use of maps, other geographic representations, including globes, diagrams, ground aerial photographs, satellite image, the typical list that you see in the national curriculum, different iterations of the national curriculum, but also in GCSE subject content and specifications. And the issue that Ofsted identified with procedural knowledge is not new. In the 2008 Ofsted report, it identified limitations in the quality of teaching, of insufficient development of geographical skills, insufficient use of maps, field work progressively to build up pupil skills. The 2011 report, that most students had poorly developed map skills. Frequently, teachers gave students insufficient opportunities to develop real competence in map skills. John Hopkin, a colleague of mine we both work on the GA's assessment and examination special interest group, has just written, and it's about to be published by the GA, an overview of Ofsted reports of geography from 1991 to the present 2023. And he explains that although significant strengths are identified, there are some persistent weaknesses. One is the systematic study of place, particularly distant places, the consistent development and use of geographical skills, and opportunity to engage with fieldwork ICT and latterly GIS. And we'll touch on all of those in this session. I always come back and start with this statement from the Ofsted's subject-specific grade descriptors, and this one for outstanding quality of teaching, is that maps at a variety of scales are used frequently as a matter of routine and are an intrinsic part of learning in geography. This ensures that pupils have good spatial awareness and are very secure in their ability to locate places they're studying. This report is still, although it's 2013, is still a very useful indicator of outstanding quality. And the web link that I've got here provides you with access to these reports for every subject, as well as obviously as geography. In 2021, I wrote this book for the GA, Planning Your Coherent 11 to 16 Geography Curriculum, a design toolkit, which builds on a lot of the tools that we developed for the 2007 national curriculum when I was at QCA. And we developed a curriculum toolkit to support the implementation of that national curriculum. I've developed these 7 steps in curriculum design linked to the 3 I's of Ofsted in terms of curriculum intent, implementation, and impact. And I'll follow through these headings through the course, through this presentation. These are recent publications, obviously the Ofsted Bearings Report, the excellent Framework for School Geography, published by the GA and pulled together by Eleanor Rawling in 2022, and the Assessment and Examination Special Interest Groups Guidance on Progression and Assessment in Geography. And I'll be demonstrating the significance of these 3 things throughout this presentation. From these, I've developed a second edition of Progress in Geography, and to go with it is the Progress in Geography Curriculum Handbook that explains the educational thinking behind the second edition. And most recently, Ordnance Survey have published Planning for Pupil Progress in the Use of Ordnance Survey Maps, which I've written for the OS. This shows the contents page of the curriculum handbook. The curriculum handbook is a PDF that can be downloaded from Boost for schools that subscribe to that. And you can see that the structure of this handbook follows intent, implementation, and impact, as does this publication. This is the OS guidance that we've recently done. And I've provided at the top there a web link where you can download the PDF, and that follows, as I say, the same sequence. And at the end, the references and online resources give you a whole host of places you can go to find out materials about using Ordnance Survey maps and opportunities to use GIS online. So this is the main thrust then of today. What is the significance of procedural knowledge in designing a coherent and sequenced geography curriculum? I'll start with the UK government's geospatial strategy. In the foreword, the minister responsible for that had this to say about place. We depend on a sense of place to understand the world, what's happening around us and in distant places. This technology, the technology of using locational data, has become ubiquitous. We all expect to access our location wherever we are, whenever we need it. It's a part of 21st century life. And so we in school should be introducing students to do this by building up the skills necessary to interpret maps and for them to be able to use freedom to use these sorts of technologies. But it's all part and parcel of thinking geographically. And the first iteration of thinking geographically was published in 2009 in the GA's A Different View, a manifesto for geography education in response to the 2007 national curriculum. And this was the first time really that the GA asked us to consider geography as a language. And as a language, it has a vocabulary to speak it, but it also needs grammar, rules and concepts and procedures to allow us to construct it. So the grammar is the big ideas of the subject, the vocabulary, the geographical information. And I've again placed a link there so you can go back and look at that should you so wish. The framework for a school geography curriculum is built on that, and the ambition of the framework is to ensure that any curriculum incorporating its principles will have the disciplinary power to help young people make sense of the world. And it was written predominantly for a curriculum review, which we are in the process of starting in England, and we await the curriculum review final report. So this puts us in a strong position because a lot of the thinking that we need in terms of this is already has already been done. This document helpfully defines and identifies the difference between substantive knowledge, the full range and the contextual knowledge of the world around us, and the disciplinary knowledge. Let's just focus on that disciplinary knowledge. So it identifies its three elements to it. One, the geographical concepts, the knowing that, and this publication identifies four core key concepts: place, space, earth systems, and environment, and then some organizational concepts: time, scale, diversity, interconnection, and interpretation. But any group of geographers who you could collect together, perhaps people who are in this presentation, would come up with a different set of concepts. That's the nature of concepts. Depending on your take on the subject, they will be different, but this is a useful starting point. The geographical practice, the knowing how geographers find out work like a geographer, the skills they need, the approaches to geographical inquiry, and geographical application, knowing how to apply, how geographers apply knowledge and make use of their geography. So the interim report of the curriculum review included a conceptual paper. That conceptual paper acknowledged the power of the importance of teachers as curriculum makers, but identified the three elements of a knowledge-rich curriculum. So again, using the same terminology, the same approach: substantive knowledge, disciplinary knowledge, and knowledge of personal, social, and cultural practice. And again, I've provided a link to that interim report if you've not seen it. And the final report's imminent sometime in the autumn, hopefully this month. So that's a useful starting point. And the review process, their mantra is evolution, not revolution. So it's hopefully going to build on where we are in thinking about curriculum and curriculum design. So to summarize, this table summarizes the key elements of thought about progression and about curriculum planning. So the left-hand column there has the national curriculum aims: world knowledge, understanding, and competence in geographical inquiry and skills. There are the middle column has the elements of the GA's curriculum framework: the substantive knowledge, the disciplinary knowledge of thinking like a geographer and working like a geographer. And on the right-hand column are the 5 dimensions of progress. So this pulls them all together in one place so you can see how they interconnect and provide the basis of thinking for designing a coherent geography curriculum. The late Trevor Bennett is a person I always go to. He's the great thinker in terms of progression and its effect and its implications for curriculum design. And this 1995 article on continuity and progression, I think, is still of great relevance. He explains the idea of progression on focusing how pupils' learning advances, and it can be applied to both the curriculum design and the gradual gains in knowledge and understanding in skills and competence which pupils will actually achieve. And that progress needs to take account of past, present, and future learning, what pupils already experience and have achieved, and what reasonably can be expected for them to do in the future. And a key element of progress in geography and being one book is we can remind students and get them to retrieve information and ideas from earlier in the book, and also signpost future developments in terms of that progress. Continuity is the persistence of significant features of curriculum education. So the continuity is provided by introducing and developing concepts. So it will help pupils acquire knowledge and develop their understanding of key things which they've come against before, and that equally applies to the procedural knowledge that they'll learn. So let's think about I'm going to look at two of the first four stages of curriculum process. I'm going to focus on creating a vision and designing your curriculum. So here's the vision for progress in geography. So page 1 of the book identifies what we're trying to achieve. It identifies the 3 main progression strands: understanding, world knowledge, and application of geographical skills. And there's a flap that identifies the opportunities, the vision for progress in geography, the areas with which they will progress. This was then developed by the original author team to create a progression framework. This progression framework has along the bottom the age-related expectations for an 11-year-old based on the benchmark statements in the GA's progression framework. And towards the top, by the end of Progress in Geography course, that's notionally year 9, pupils should be able to do, and then those benchmark statements for the 3 progression strands have been customized to suit the Progress in Geography course. The understanding section has been divided into physical geography, processes and patterns, human geography, and physical and human interaction. And then across the top are the assessment objectives for GCSE to demonstrate how progress in geography provides a foundation to build on with at GCSE level. On the arrows, the upward arrow showing progress for the 3 progression strands are the GA's dimensions of progress. So the list of content and the world locational knowledge is the substantive knowledge. That's knowing like a geographer. The understanding and procedural knowledge is the disciplinary knowledge, thinking like a geographer, and procedural knowledge of working like a geographer. And applying like a geographer runs across the whole thing, applying the knowledge and understanding that they've learnt in new and different contexts. So here's the progression framework for the course with the key performance indicators, identifying the responsibilities of each unit in terms of introducing and progressing particular forms of knowledge, particular concepts, and particular skills. You can access this. First of all, remember that Ofsted was saying that there's in a lot of schools an overall plan to build pupils' procedural knowledge over time, and this is an example of how that can be done. And it also said that it wasn't assessed. Well, these key performance indicators actually provide the basis for what it is you're going to assess. The key performance indicator for each unit, what it's trying to achieve, are actually assessment opportunities. You can download an Excel version of the progression framework from the Progress in Geography website. And if you're a Boost learning user, you subscribe to Boost, you can download it as a PDF. Hachette have actually published a hard copy of this, so that's a progression framework laid out and a poster of the vision, because the vision, what you're trying to achieve, needs to be shared with the pupils, and you need to keep returning to it so pupils can see in a particular unit of work how it fits into the big picture of their progress. And as Ofsted said here, that sequencing a geography curriculum, the content as a progression framework is a really helpful device to identify precisely what you want pupils to know and sequence it clearly. So they're suggesting that a clear progression map is very significant for each subject, and we've provided that for Progress in Geography, and it was our basis for developing the course. Just quickly, let's look at geographical understanding. There are the concepts then. So different concepts to the GA. Some of them are, but we think these were appropriate for Key Stage 3. So place, space, scale, Earth systems, and the human process of economy, development, population, and sustainability. And the word interconnected is in bold because part of being a geographer is realizing the interconnections between those concepts. And here's a concept map. This is from the progression framework demonstrating where concepts are introduced and how they're progressed. And you'll notice that from Unit 1 to Unit 18 at the top, from about Unit 12 onwards, most of the concepts are progressed in those units, because this is where the more demanding work is, where we want students to be able to see the interconnections between those concepts. And in the glossary, we have an introductory definition of each of those concepts. Okay, back to Trevor Bennett's and planning for procedural knowledge. Trevor in the article identified 3 main areas of learning with procedural knowledge: specific techniques, so fieldwork, use of maps, and lately GIS, cognitive thinking, describing, interpreting, analysing, explaining things, and strategies for geographical inquiry. And he makes the point that although these 3 areas are different, it's often necessary to use them in conjunction to develop what he thinks are competencies that are dependent on knowledge and understanding. And he illustrates what he means by that. So to interpret a coastal relief depicted on a 1 to 50,000 ordnance survey map, it would be necessary to know something about coastal processes and coastal landforms, as well as the ordnance survey symbols. So in 1995, he was intimating the connection between knowledge, understanding, and skills, and the pivotal role that skills have in gelling knowledge and understanding together. Phil Wood, in his article Debates in Geography Education in 2013, had this to say: if we only want students to know and understand some geographical content, then skills are not central to their development. But if the main intention is to aid students to begin to act as geographers, then skills are an inherent element in learning in geography. And in developing a curriculum, careful thought needs to be given to the emphasis and role of skills for the learner. And if skills are embedded with content and concept, what order are those skills actually developed in? In the Ordnance Survey guidance, I make the following point about the significance of skills. And rather than view skills as a list to be covered, this needs a change of mindset to think about how to develop pupils' geographical practice to work like a geographer. And to do that, you need an understanding of the significance of procedural knowledge to your curriculum intent, and what that developing that procedural knowledge is trying to achieve. And to do that, you need require an understanding of the purpose of developing such skills as SMAP. And this is all explained in the OS guidance. So interpreting OS maps provide opportunities to think like a geographer, where pupils can marshal and apply their knowledge and understanding of the big ideas of the subject to interpret a particular landscape, the physical and human landscape, and to see the in-between spaces of interconnections between that physical and human landscape. Okay, so if we now look at maps specifically as a simple communication system, a map maker encodes information on the map, and then the map user decodes that information. So maps are complicated. The signs and concepts that they encode, unlike spoken or written language, are displayed all at once. So we need to support learners in order to interpret what the map shows. In order not to be misled by maps, learners have to understand the rules that cartographers use to create them, according to Patrick Wagan there. The Ofsted Geography Research Review emphasised that the stronger their ability to use maps allows students to better relate to geographical concepts. So we need to use maps to encourage students to analyse and interpret maps. If we go all the way back to 1989 and the GA's original national curriculum paper, working party paper, it had this to say about maps. Maps are sophisticated and abstract documents. The child's understanding of how they work and what they convey does not emerge spontaneously, but requires a carefully planned sequence of learning experiences. So what does that look like? What are those? What does progression in procedural knowledge look like? Well, to start with, obviously, map reading, so decoding, extracting information from a map, identifying and locating features on the map, which is what we traditionally think of as map reading. But transformation is important as well, and we need to plan for where that's going to be introduced and developed. So this is transferring information such as drawing cross sections or sketch maps from a map. Using other sources of data with a map, so ground and aerial photographs, satellite images, historical maps, for example. Map analysis, a process of describing patterns and relationships or measuring distances between places on maps, and where we really want students to get to map interpretation, which goes beyond what's shown on the map and involves students applying previously acquired information to solve problems and make decisions. Their ability to see relationships on the map is where we want students to get to gel together their knowledge and understanding with those skills to apply them. If we go back to, if we look specifically at map reading, this very interesting article by Margaret McIntosh in 2008 in Primary Geographer about the really difficult concept of getting students to move from their child's eye view of the world to a vertical view of the world. And in her article, she makes the following points: that going from pupils' familiar world, the horizontal, to the perspective of most maps, the vertical, is a huge conceptual leap. And we need to support students and give them opportunities to make the small steps on that journey to be able to do that. So that in planning a coherent and progressive approach to using maps, we don't hear older children say, I can't do maps. And this is a really important concept to ensure that students have initially in map reading. This article from 2004 about using maps identify a series of core skills for six-figure references and scale, area, heights on map, drawing cross sections. The traditional things that used to be presented in a first unit of work, maybe in a course, and then not progressed, forgotten about. And they make the point that without these core skills, students may find it difficult to grasp the higher skills needed to appreciate maps. So ensuring these are in place in order to move students to map interpretation and problem solving exercises. Weigand, in his book Learning and Teaching Maps, he believes that students should be introduced a wide range of types of maps, and this figure from the OS guidance that I've written demonstrates that range of maps. How far do you develop that range of different maps and plan for that range of maps in your current Key Stage 3 curriculum? And transformation, these are the sort of things that pupils need to use in conjunction with an Ordnance Survey map. How far do you plan for that? How far do you plan for using a map with a geology map, or drawing a cross section, drawing a sketch map, and so on, and field work, which is obviously the best way to use an Ordnance Survey map in the field. Do you take an Ordnance Survey map of your school grounds, for example, and take the pupils outside so they're familiar with using a map in the field? And moving to map interpretation, this is a descriptor for a really interesting article from 1997 written by Paul Whedon, a descriptor of the transition from map reading to map interpretation. And this particular student, David, great name, when asked to describe and explain patterns on a map, started to analyze the question. He describes their arrangement in a tight ring around the city centre. He draws on his knowledge of urban models to recall the main features. He applies his knowledge by picturing a redevelopment in his own town. So this description of the way David worked explains how map interpretation works. He was thinking involved a complex interaction of knowledge, recall, and synthesized information from the map. The symbols on the map can be read like the words in a book, but they have little meaning unless they are combined to make sentences. So reading between the lines. I think that's a really excellent idea of what we mean by map interpretation. The vocabulary and the grammar of the language of geography working together. So in terms of your curriculum intent, what do you visualize? What capabilities do you visualize the students will have? And here's a list of some of the things you might consider. They can make connections between map evidence and physical and human geography. They use map evidence to make decisions and problem solve and so on. But you can look at that at your leisure in the recording. We used an if-then activity from my book to think about progress in geography. So if we said, well, we want pupils who can make use of different scales and of map and routinely better understand places and spaces, then they need to be introduced to a range of map skills, experience planned and sequence opportunities to progress those skills, to progress their capability to make sense of maps. And we've embedded those things in the planning documentation and the vision of what progress in geography is trying to achieve. So we've already talked about the progression map. For each unit of work, there's a medium-term plan and 10 lesson plans within each unit. And all these are downloadable from Boost as Word files, which you can customize to suit your needs. Progress in Geography Boost also includes some videos, and there's a video of Ellie, there she is, Ellie Barker, introducing to students the vision flap, and I explain the 3 progression strands of the course and the process of geographical inquiry. So, implementation. Well, the first unit of Progress in Geography then is a transition unit from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3. All the lessons can be used for assessments to gauge how far your students are at the descriptors of an age 11 student. Trevor Bennett's talked about a curriculum that's designed to give pupils opportunity to improve the quality of their descriptions and explanations, and their explanations can reveal their understanding. So we've embedded that into Progress in Geography. So in lesson 1.4, we explain how to write like a geographer and include some advice on how to write like a geographer, which pupils are referred back to in other units. In lesson 2.3, we explain for students how to describe distribution patterns. And that's referred to and reminded of pupils for them to go back and look at that in future lessons. So in the lesson plan for this lesson 2.3, it explains that each lesson plan has an about the lesson section that explains the significance of that lesson and anything in particular about that lesson that it provides. So this explains that this lesson is an important stepping stone in progressing pupils' abilities to think and write like a geographer. When thinking through what we wanted to achieve in terms of map skills, we decided to have some flaps in the book which were used across different lessons. And so there's a list of the different maps and the lessons that they're used in to progress their use of ordnance survey maps. So, for example, the Southampton map in lesson 1.8 is used in conjunction, part of transformation, used in conjunction with an aerial photograph. In lesson 10.6, the Southampton map flap is used in conjunction with an 1890 Ordnance Survey map of the same area. And in lesson 10.7, the Southampton map is used with maps of different scales and a land use model to interpret for Southampton. In lesson 3.4, in studying why Nissan was located in the UK, the use of the Ordnance Survey map extract and the aerial photograph are embedded as part of the activities, and students are required to use the OS map to draw a sketch map. So another example of transformation. The map flaps are also available as PDFs to download and use and print off and use with your students. So one of the ways they can interpret maps, this is the one of the river maps of Teesside and one of the aerial photograph that's in progress in geography. They can then write their interpretation on the map. In lesson 11.6, students are investigate Spurn Head as part of looking at the Holderness coast, and there's an activity there where they compare the aerial photograph with the Ordnance Survey map of Spurn Point. And to support that process, one of the activity sheets provides a copy of that Ordnance Survey map, and pupils can shade straight on the different zones: the shingle, the mud, the sand, the marsh, the zigzag pattern of longshore drift, the mouth of the River Humber can be labelled straight onto the Ordnance Survey map. Also, we look at topographical maps from other countries. So New Zealand, looking at the Fox Glacier, and New Zealand have a really excellent GIS for all their maps, and you can search that GIS. So if I type in Fox Glacier, we can zoom straight into it and follow up the valley and see the Fox Glacier. Web links like this to GISs are embedded within lesson plans in Progress in Geography. This is in Unit 15.6, where a lesson provides geographical data in terms of an aerial photograph, a 1 to 25,000 map, as well as the 1 to 50,000 map flap of Helvellyn, and a ground shot looking across Striding Edge. And the lesson involves activities where, to start with, pupils use Google Earth to explore the glacial features of Helvellyn, identify the glacial features on the Ordnance Survey map in a table using the map and the photographs. That builds on what they've learnt in prior learning in that unit from lesson 5.1 to 5.5. Activity 5, they draw a cross section from the 1 to 25,000 map across the Corrie. And activity 7, they interpret the Ordnance Survey map to apply their understanding to determine the directions that the glaciers moved in the area of Helvellyn. The significance of this as an assessment is explained in the About section for that particular lesson. We also introduce measuring using chloropeth maps in Unit 8.2, and the lesson plan explains that it's introduced in this lesson, but then used in successive lessons to build students' capabilities to use such maps. From the Ordnance Survey Guidance, Rachel Kay, a head of department and member of the GA Secondary Phase Committee, has this to say about embedding map skills in their curriculum, and that they are of great value that the students use their skills to think more critically and analytically and ask questions and deepen and strengthen their arguments and deepen their geographical understanding. Widening this out to other geographical data, lesson 1.2 introduces students to geographical data and also flags up in a future learning box, so connecting past, present, future learning by explaining they'll get the opportunity to use a wide range of geographical data. And this infographic summarizes that range of geographical data that encompasses progress in geography. But these aspects of progressing procedural knowledge are not just apply to Ordnance Survey maps. We've planned for progression in the use of climate graphs, but also population pyramids. If we quickly look at population pyramids, then this lesson introduces population pyramids and explains how they can be used. Lesson 9.8 looks at from not a national level, but now a regional level, local level, that population pyramids, the structures of populations will be different in different parts of the country. And there's an activity that links to the really excellent population pyramids on the census website, where it's possible to select a pyramid. So Hartlepool, we're making a comparison between Hartlepool and Leicester. So we see the two pyramids, we see the different populations between the country, between the cities, and can look at how that data changes by moving forward in a decade on this switcher, and we can see how the shapes of the pyramids change. I think that's a really excellent tool to look at population structure change. And we also, in the regional units, so this is unit 12.5, comparing a pyramid for India and Japan. So, and that then links to the Stretch and Challenge, looks at a population pyramid website where it's possible to select pyramid for a particular country and then also see change by moving forward 5 years and seeing an animation of how the pyramid will change, how the population structure will change. So these are all embedded in the lesson plans and often in the textbook. Okay, GIS. So GIS is a problem. It's not being taught in, although it's on the national curriculum, a lot of schools are not teaching it, and there's various reasons why they're not. The GA blog, and if you don't use the GA blog, I strongly recommend you do. It's a really interesting, helpful, topical thought process. And at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see this one that the GA Special Interests Group for ICT developed is a 5-minute read. They explain why they think it's not used and are encouraging schools, calling teachers to find ways to make GIS part of the furniture. So what does that look like? Well, in Progress in Geography, we introduce GIS in lesson 3.7, but that's a unit on economy. So we connect GIS to things they've already learnt about economy. So there's a quote there from how GIS is used in the port of Southampton, which they've already studied in this unit. And there's an article about how farmers, which they've already studied farming in this unit, how farmers are using GIS to revolutionise their business. And that lesson plan also includes in the About section guidance of other places you can find out about how to develop GIS in your curriculum. This is a lesson about the Holderness Coast and change. We put a screenshot in here from Digimap, and Digimap provides an excellent tool for draping change by, and this screenshot drapes the latest Ordnance Survey map with an 1890s Ordnance Survey map, and compare it with the 1 to 25,000 map flap of south of Mappleton before they do some measuring to calculate how much cliff's being lost. And Digimap's a really excellent tool for doing things like this. So if I quickly log on to Digimap, and I'm going to search Mappleton. On the map selector, I've got the 1890s map draped with the current Ordnance Survey map, and I can drag this across and change. I'll put it somewhere in the middle, so we've got the two draped over each other. Zoom a bit closer in, so we can see the existing coastline there and the coast where the coastline was in 1890. Go to the measuring tool, click in to start. Measure the distance. You could get students measuring distances along and working out an average. It's a very easy, quick tool to use, and an excellent application of GIS, I think. In unit lesson 9.4, looking at countries, population census material, again using the 2021 census, it's possible to investigate a particular location and see a whole range of data and how that location connects or compares to the rest of the country. Another really good way of using GIS, embedded into the lesson, making it part of the furniture, as the ICT groups say. Katie Hall explains how using GIS has revolutionized and provides a link to their online material. And the GA's ICT working group have an excellent website where they provide examples of online resources. So this is parallel.com. This is a GIS company who are working on developing their GIS visualizations. It's useful to see for students to see that people in the workplace are developing GIS. So finally then, impact. What's the impact of your curriculum? 2 stages, evaluating and whether you move on or change. Catherine Balcom from Westminster City School, a member of the GA's ACID group, in evaluating integrating OS maps into their curriculum, explains in the GA guide, the Ordnance Survey guidance, explains that since embedding OS maps more explicitly throughout Key Stage 3 and 4, it's had a positive impact on students' confidences, and she used evidence from GCSE results of that. And she explains that we've learned that maps are not just an add-on to lessons to tick off a skills checklist for exam readiness. They're an invaluable tool for progressing students' understanding of the core concepts of geography. They're now thinking of moving on, next steps. They're thinking of applying the strategies that are developed in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 to Key Stage 5. And in summary and conclusion, I think it's a great way to finish. So overall, the time we've invested in thinking through progressing map skills strategically across all key stages has transformed the way in which that they teach and students learn on geography on a daily basis. Fred Martin, in an article in 2006, from the archive, looking at different ways in which teachers are talking about map work, referred to an article that I wrote in 2005 called Maps as a Matter of Routine, using that statement from Ofsted. And he makes the point that no matter what style of map or technology by which is produced, it's their constant and embedded use that is essential in geographical education. And finally, the Ofsted, an Ofsted article written by Lesha Kavashkov in 2013 identified what good practice in geography is. And it's about understanding key concepts, inquiry, graphicacy, geographical communication, regular field work, effective teaching, making a frequent use of maps at a variety of scales, and good use of ICT and GIS. And just to finish off, is a list of online resources. I understand that the web links have been added to the chat, and you'll certainly be able to investigate these at your leisure later on. So that's a quick run through of planning for progress in procedural knowledge. We're always very grateful for any feedback you have. I'm working very closely with Alison Schrecker, whose email address is provided there. She's the lead product manager for geography at Hatchet, and we're planning new updates to Progress in Geography and the Boost materials, and we would really like any of your thoughts and suggestions. So the QR code here, I think, takes you to a short questionnaire, and you can email Alison direct. And I think we've got time for a few questions. When you get the recording, you can look at different aspects of this at your leisure and find. I strongly urge people to read Trevor Bennett's 1996 article on continuity and progression. I think it gives some really useful pointers to designing your coherent curriculum.
Okay, well, I think we'll finish there. So thank you everyone for coming. And as I just mentioned, the recording and all the links will be sent to you within 1 week. And if you do want to give us some feedback, we'd be really grateful for that. So if you can click on the link that will be posted in the chat or use the QR code, that would be excellent. Thank you all for your time. We hope to see you again soon.
And I hope you found the presentation useful.